What does make a person a pessimist or an optimist? What makes some people happier overall and other people more depressed and sad? And does it have to do with your environment, upbringing, or your circle, or does it have to do with your genes and your DNA? Like, are we born with it, or do we acquire this personality trait or this characteristic over a lifetime? Let's talk about it. Here's my opinion on it. Just like there are some people who are born with certain predisposition to be depressed and anxious, same thing goes other way around. You can be born with a predisposition to be more positive and happy person, have a lot easier time to overlook negative things and focus on the positive. For sure, part of it has to do with your innate personality. But I still believe that a big portion of it is about your upbringing, your environment, people around you, and examples that you had in your life. I've definitely met people who went from being an optimist to a pessimist and pessimist to an optimist because of their experiences or traumas or healing journey, so much that goes into it. And I have put together in this video a couple of techniques. I don't know what I should call it, mindset shift, couple of things that you can do and implement in your life today to practice being more positive and by extent also more happy in your life. And the reason I think I'm like the most qualified person to do it is for a couple of reasons. First of all, literally ask anybody, my family, my friends, my boyfriend, all of them will tell you that I am just super positive and optimistic person all the time, sometimes even too much. Like sometimes we would joke about it. My boyfriend would ask me like, how was my day? And I would say great, amazing, wonderful. And he would be like, yeah, I would be surprised if you said something else. Like that's just how I am. And it doesn't mean that I'm not going through setbacks or I'm not struggling or I'm not having bad days. Everybody experiences ups and downs. It's all about how you view it and how you deal with it. I actually believe that by learning to be more positive and happy, you can actually improve your life in other aspects as well. I'm not gonna go too much into this topic in this particular video, but the way law of attraction and energies work is that whatever you put out is what you get. If you put out negative energy, negative expectations, and you're sad and depressed, don't be surprised if that's what you're getting back. You're getting shitty people in your life who treat you bad and perpetuate this cycle of negativity and depression. You're going to get shitty situation or problems. It's no surprise that depression is really, really hard to cure. I don't even know if there is a cure to depression because whenever I meet somebody who is depressed, they are just taking antidepressants. That's their way to deal with it. I've never heard of like a common or popular treatment or therapy or something to deal with depression that is other than medication. And I think this is so sad because through these techniques that I'm going to talk to you guys about, I'm sure 100% that starting today, you can start to be slightly positive and as a result, more happy in your life. But you really got to see it as a journey because nothing is an overnight fix. Otherwise, it wouldn't last. But the more you practice it, the more it will become part of your personality. And at some point, a year from now, you'll look back and be like, I can't believe I was so negative and so upset about things, and I would get angry so easily. And now, simply because I made this mindset shifts, I'm a totally different person. So, without further ado, let's dive in. First thing you need to learn if you want to be a generally more happy and positive person is you need to learn how to shift perspective. Whatever situation you're in, if it's negative situation and it makes you unhappy, think about how can you shift your perspective and find something positive in this situation, or simply just look at the situation from a different angle that is not making you as upset and frustrated. For example, and in this video, I'm going to give a lot of personal examples or examples of my team, people I work with, just to illustrate my point. When I was 20 years old, that's when I started university. And at the time, if you know my story a little bit, I became an entrepreneur at 21 and I quit my job. I make my living as a coach and investor. But before I found what I'm currently doing, for over a year, I was very unsuccessful. Around 20 years old, when I started university, and I started realizing I don't want to do this. Like, sure, the subject I was studying was fascinating. I was studying psychology, but I did not want to work a 9 to 5 for the rest of my life. I did not want to spend decades of my life chasing the tiniest promotions and be at the whim of economy and my employer. On top of the fact that I didn't want to spend most of my 20s studying and hustling just to come out of university and get some entry level job and be treated like nothing. All of that inspired me to want to look for other ways to earn. And back then, I've seen a lot of people my age, girls my age, who would travel the world and live an amazing life. And I was like, they're all making a living online through content creation, through marketing, through online high paying skill sets. There's many ways you can make money online. And I started exploring them because I was like, what the hell? I'm not losing anything. I know clearly that I don't want to follow this traditional path. So let me look for something else. And that began a long 1 year journey of investing into different things, different courses, coaches, reading books, and nothing would pay off. I would spend hours starting businesses, watching YouTube videos on what to do and how to do it, invest thousands of dollars that I didn't really have. Like, I was really living paycheck to paycheck, for it to be all wasted. Nothing would really click for me. At the time, I could get frustrated and just say, I don't want to do this anymore. It's not worth it. It's a waste of time. Let me just stick with something that is proven and works. But I didn't give up. At that moment, I shifted the perspective. I told myself, in 5 years from now, once I finally figure it out, because I know I will figure it out. If you listen to any successful people, they all say, like, try to fail a lot, try many things, because at some point it will click and it will all make it worth it, which exactly that happened to me. I told myself, when I'm like 5 years older and I finally have this successful business online and I'm able to travel and do all these things that I always dreamt about, and I'm not going to need to work a job because I've created something that pays me passively, I'm going to look back and be like, thank God that I didn't stop looking. Because the only way I could fail and have all those money and energy to be a waste is if I stopped. But because I didn't, and I finally found something, for me it took a year. For some people it's faster or longer. It's still worth it though, especially if you're clear about the fact that you don't want to keep living just like everybody else. You want something better and different for yourself. That shift of perspective pushed me to keep going. If I only looked from my perspective at that moment, I would feel sorry for myself. I would be like, I can't believe I wasted all this money. I could have gone on vacation. I could have bought myself a purse or whatever. I could have treated myself more. But I put all this money into education and courses that led to nothing, but it was all leading to something because I looked from the perspective of myself, but 5 years from now, it took away all the stress. It took away all of this pain and re-energized me. Let me give you a second example, something that maybe more of you are more familiar with, something more common. Let's say you're in a coffee shop. You're ordering your coffee. Your barista seems kind of mean and they're having a bad day and they're just kind of rude to you and almost telling you off. um, I don't know if it's realistic. I don't really go to coffee shops. I drink matcha and I do it at home. Speaking of which, let me have a sip. This example could apply to anything, like an angry colleague or bad service somewhere. You can tell yourself at that very moment, I can't believe they're so rude to me. I did not deserve it. I'm so upset. This is unfair, and so on and on. And this emotions of anger and negativity will fuel you to feel pissed off for the rest of the day. And as a result, your happiness levels will go down. Instead, you can tell yourself, it's not about me. They're having a bad day. Maybe something happened. Maybe they really wish they didn't have to work this shift today because they were not feeling well, or a family member needed them, but their boss forced them to be there. It's not about me. And this is the case most of the time. If you're having interpersonal problems or conflicts, the person is being unfairly mean to you, or they're overreacting over such a small issue, majority of the time it's about them. Not majority, but like 99.9% of the time it's about them. It's almost never about you. Something triggered them, or they've been having a really bad day and they're lashing out on you. And if you simply shift this perspective, instead of seeing everything from your own point of view all the time, look at it from more of a bird's eye view. What is actually happening in this situation? If somebody would look from the side and they're having a totally normal day and it's not affecting them whatsoever, they're simply witnessing this happen, what would they think? Would they actually think, oh, barista is being mean all of a sudden because you are something, you did something? Of course not. Second thing you can implement to be happier, more positive person is you gotta realize how insignificant everything is. I watched this video the other day where they were showing how we are all tiny little microorganisms flying through space, and we are so incredibly insignificant in this enormous universe that ultimately nothing really matters. You are not the center of the world. World is not the center of the world, of the universe. And even our known universe, apparently, this is something I learned very recently, is not the main universe, if I can say it like that. There's apparently a lot of universes. It's crazy. Science progressing so fast and there is a lot of new discoveries. As crazy as it sounds, and I hope you take it in like the right way, the way that I'm trying to communicate it, you are insignificant. I am insignificant. This world is so insignificant. So why stress about things? Why worry? What's the point other than feeling shitty for no reason? A little exercise that I want to teach you that I apply for years now. I learned it from a podcast a long time ago, and now it's a huge part of my thinking on a daily basis. Whenever I am experiencing something upsetting, negative, frustrating, whatever, here's what I ask myself. I go, in 2 years from now, is this situation, this conflict, this whatever it is, going to matter? Am I going to sit there and think about it and still be worried about it? Probably not. 99% of things that are upsetting you, unless it's a huge, huge tragedy, they are not going to matter in 2 years from now. And if they're not going to matter in 2 years from now, why spend more than 5 minutes worrying about it? So I created this rule for myself. If it's not going to matter in 2 years from now, I only spend not more than 5 minutes worrying about it, and then I move on. Sometimes what helps me to do it is journaling. Just write down what happened, how I feel about it. Maybe I try to do some perspective shift while writing, how I could see it differently from a different perspective. And usually, as soon as I put it on a paper, the heavy emotion that was associated to it kind of disappears and melts away. So I hope you apply it. Third thing I wanted to talk to you guys about is you got to become aware what negative emotions serve you. Because oftentimes, if there are certain emotions that you're feeling repeatedly, it's because they're serving you. Maybe when you are upset and angry and you have the grumpy face on, your colleagues leave you alone. And that's what you want. You want peace. So, in order to have your colleagues at work leave you alone or avoid you, you are automatically, and it's oftentimes subconscious, guys, you automatically put on a grumpy face, and with it come some negative emotions. Could that be the case? I know for myself, when I was a teenager, anytime I would be around my parents, I would put just the most unemotional face on so that they don't ask me any questions. Because if I would be happy, then they would be like, oh, what makes you happy? What happened today? Blah, blah, blah. And as a teenager, you don't really want to talk to your parents. You just want to go to your room as fast as possible and not be bothered. So if I was happy, they would ask me questions. If I was sad or angry or upset, they would ask me questions. But I noticed if my face was totally neutral with no obvious emotions on it, they would leave me alone, which what I wanted at the time. And I started to internalize this. So I want you to assess the situations where you're usually feeling upset or angry or negative. Also analyze how you are in school, how you are at work, how you are around your family or friends, and see if you can discover any hidden motives for your negative emotions. Does it serve you? Because if it does, it's going to be a lot harder for you to be happy and positive. An exercise you can do once you have identified there are some situations that trigger you and make you negative in order to achieve a certain goal. See if you can shift the perspective. For example, in case of me as a teenager with my parents, I could, if I did this exercise and I wanted to see it differently because I want to be more happy generally, I would be like, why is it such a big deal though? Why don't I want to talk to my parents? Let's dig to an actual reason. And is it really that bad if they ask me, how was my day? And I share with them some things about it? It's going to take 2 to 5 minutes out of my day. And these are some of the most important people in my life. Is it really that bad that I want to sabotage myself in order to avoid this interaction? So there we go. A simple perspective shift. Fourth and last thing I'm going to talk about, thing you can do to feel happier and more positive, is you really need to figure out your unresolved trauma. Oftentimes, if we are angry, negative, more prone to be pissed off and frustrated, I'm sure that there is underlying reason and explanation to it. For example, this is once again my personal story. I am very sensitive to aggressive people. Like, whenever somebody directs their aggression towards me, I shut off. I just freeze and I don't know what to do. And this comes from my childhood. I never learned how to deal with it. And there was some things that happened where I experienced aggression directed towards me, and I was way too young to know how to deal with it. This trauma was buried deep inside of me. It stayed there for a very long time, and it shows when somebody is aggressive towards me. I have really hard time controlling my emotions. I don't explode or I don't get aggressive back. I just shut off, which is not the best way to deal with it. I want to be able to respond in situations where response is expected and be in control of my emotions to a certain extent. So I dealt with it. I went to therapy and I made certain shifts in my mindset and the way I look at the situation. I uncovered that trauma, and now it's no longer that much of a trigger. It's still there because it's a process. It takes years and years oftentimes to clear unresolved trauma. But because I became aware and I started this process, one day it will never trigger me again. So I want you, and this is not something you can do through a YouTube video, If you have some unresolved trauma and situation where you often find yourself overreacting or triggered or just incredibly sad, anxious, frustrated for no apparent reason, like a normal person would not react like this, but you do, then it's probably something that needs to be dealt and addressed through therapy. So there we go. These are the specific ways you can shift your mindset and techniques you can apply, exercises you can use in order to feel happier and more positive. And I promise you, if you do this intentionally, you will change. You can be a totally different person in 6 months from now in terms of your mindset and your attitude towards life, people around you, situations. If you like this video, please hit a like button. It doesn't cost you nothing. I really, really appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe, and I will see you at the next one.